Viterbo University, I want to extend a warm welcome. I have the very best job on the face of the earth. I am a teacher, and I'm proud to tell you that I'm a Holocaust educator. I hope you understand how important teachers are in your lives, and I hope that you'll take time to thank your teachers for all they do for you. Each of you in this audience has the power to make a difference and not be a bystander when you see injustice occur. You're going to learn today what happens when people do not accept other people's differences. I'm thrilled to see so many of you here because you're going to touch history today. You're going to hear about the past from survivor Irene Miller, who lived it. Ultimately, it is only through remembering and reflecting that we can regain an understanding of the past and not repeat it. The age of Holocaust survivors is drawing to a close. Before long, no one's going to be left to say, I was there, I saw, I remember what happened. And now you're going to hear Irene's inspirational story, but first of all, I'm going to tell you, with her permission, that you won't believe it when you see her come out. On April 17th, she's going to turn 94 years old. And now, prepare to fall in love with Irene Miller. There you go.
I am one of the 10% of Jewish children who survived the Holocaust. Among the 6 million of Jews who were killed during the Holocaust were 1.5 million of children. 90% of Jewish children were killed. Though I can tell you only about my survivor journey, those of us who are fortunate to be left alive become also the voices of those who didn't live to tell their story. I was born in Warsaw, the capital of Poland. This is what I looked like when Nazis attacked Poland. My immediate family was made up of 4. Here is my older sister and I. She is here 8 and I am 3. And our parents. But we had a large extended family in Poland, numbering close to 100 members. When Nazis attacked Poland, it seems to me that Warsaw was under siege for a few weeks. Day and night, bombs were falling. We lived on the top floor of an apartment where it was the most vulnerable place because bombs were falling through the roof ceilings and into the homes. So with the cooperation of friends who lived on the 2nd floor, we moved in with them. But even there it wasn't safe from the bombs. One night, a bomb fell into that apartment and exploded by the door, leaving the only way out was through the window. My father, who was a very tall man, knocked on the window and jumped. And he says, we had to quickly follow him. He would catch us. But we have to do it quickly before the whole place gets engulfed in flames. When my turn came, I stood on the windowsill. It looked so far down. I was so scared I froze in place. I couldn't move. My mother pushed me out the window. Somehow, my father did not catch me, and I fell on a pile of glass, cutting my arms and legs. When the family was down, my mother picked me up, carried me to a bomb shelter, and there she was sitting, pulling out shards of glass out of my limbs. These running to bomb shelters occurred over and over, particularly at night. At some point, we lost the water. A bomb severed the water pipes, and the only way we could get at least drinking water is running down the street where there was still a functioning hose or a faucet. I remember where I was when Nazis entered Warsaw. I was in our own apartment. I don't know, it was the 4th or the 5th floor, but I was too high up to see the faces of the Nazi soldiers. They were filling the streets, marching 10, 15 abreast, but strangely, I could see the reflection of shining boots pounding and pounding the pavement. You know how long ago that happened? That happened not just before your parents were born, but I am sure before all your grandparents were born. Yet, there are still some sounds, some smells, aromas to which I still now react emotionally. One such sound, a low-flying plane. Another one is a rhythmic pounding on a hard surface. I hear it and I tighten up. My parents felt that being Jewish, and also my father was a leader in the labor union in the Jewish division. As such, they were open-minded liberal people. They felt that they would be among the first ones to be persecuted by the Nazis. So a few months after Nazis entered, they decided they have to leave Poland. And they decided to escape to the Soviet Union. On one side, Poland borders with the Soviet Union. Why to go there? Because at that time, the Nazis were not there. And some of you maybe know that later during the war, they attacked the Soviet Union as well. And why to smuggle us? Because the Soviets were protecting the border and would not allow anyone to enter. Yes, I remember the last leg of the journey trying to cross the border. It was in the middle of the night, extremely cold. We were wearing layers and layers of clothing to keep warm and also to minimize on the luggage. We were sitting inside a wagon of hay, the hay over our heads, over our faces. So should a Nazi soldier come across that wagon at night, he would not be able to see that there are people in it. At some point, this man stopped, let us off in an area that was surrounded by tall trees. You couldn't see what's beyond that. He said that we crossed already the border, and he let us off in an area that was surrounded by tall trees. You couldn't see what's beyond it. And he pointed out where in the morning we were to take a train toward the city my parents were headed, called Bialystok. We huddled up for the remainder of the night. And when we woke up in the morning and left that secluded area, we saw a field with people laying on the snow, laying on their bags, suitcases. This man did not take us across the border. He left us under no man's land. And no man's land is a territory that doesn't belong neither to the one country or another. Of course, my parents didn't want to go back to Poland. My mother pulled out a blanket, spread it over the snow among people. People were sitting very close, one next to the other. She also pulled out a down comforter, commonly used in winter in Europe. And this place, in an open field in the winter, became my home for about 6 weeks. My mother would repeat to me, move, move. If you move, you are not going to be that cold. I moved as much as I could. And when I couldn't anymore, I would crawl under the covers. At some point, my feet got frostbitten. I had open wounds. Wasn't able to wear my shoes. It was too painful. So my mother tore a garment of sorts and wrapped my feet in rags, and I shuffled around as well as I could. The only food we were able to buy was that which the peasant women from nearby villages would come after sundown and sell. Bread, boiled potatoes and their skin, and sometimes farmer cheese, and charge exorbitant prices. The only fluid we had for drinking is melting snow. There were woods in the areas, and people were making fires to warm themselves and also to melt the snow for drinking. Though I was a little girl, as you saw me there, I remember many scenes starting from the no man's land. But two images from the no man's land particularly stay in my mind, and I could almost see them. One night, I woke up and there was a strange man next to me under the covers. I tried to push him away, but apparently I fell asleep. And when I woke up in the morning, the man next to me was dead. People were dying from diseases, from exposure, from starvation, and now the peasant women were also bringing shovels for sale. And the young men buried the dead in shallow graves. The other scene, I was standing with my mother by a fire trying to warm myself, and a young woman approached holding a baby in her arms wrapped in blankets. And people assumed that she wanted to warm herself and her child, so they parted, letting her come close to the fire. But as she did so, a man looked into her arms and said, "Lady, your baby doesn't need warming anymore. The baby was dead." The man took the dead baby out of the mother's arm and proceeded with the Soviet soldiers who were guarding the border. The crowd followed him. He laid that baby in front of one of the guards, and the crowd started crying and shouting, let us in, see, we are dying one by one." And the guard didn't say a thing, just kicked the baby back into the crowd. And like all others, it was buried there. Apparently, my parents decided that they have to take some drastic steps, or we are not going to survive just laying in an open field. One night, my father smuggled himself across the border. He must have surveyed the area in advance. On the Soviet side, he bribed an official to give him a letter permitting the family to cross the border. But when he returned with that letter, the letter said he may take his children, said nothing about my mother, and the guards would not allow my mother go. Our parents decided that my father should take my sister and myself to safety and see thereafter what he can do to bring over Mom. We walked a whole night in the forest, and for me it was such a painful experience because the open wounds on my feet were wrapped in soft rags and the earth was frozen and hard. But eventually we made it to the city Białystok. Around that city were clusters of Jews from Poland. We ended up in one such cluster, a wooded area with a lot of scattered little cabins. This must have been at one time the property of a wealthy landlord, and those cabins were for his workers. No furniture of any kind, just a few families on the floor in each of those cabins. But after being for 6 weeks in an open field in the winter, laying on a wooden floor with a roof over my head, I probably felt like a queen in a palace. My father had no more money left, and also travel in the Soviet Union was forbidden. Only those who were big dignitaries or had a lot of money to bribe an official would be able to get a ticket and permission to travel. So my father tried to reach the no man's land on rooftops of trains. He was caught by the police, put in jail for a few days, let out, and tried it again and again. During all the time, when our father tried to reach the no man's land, my sister and I were left alone. Here and there, a caring person offered us a meal, but I don't remember what and how we were able to eat beside that. Eventually, our father made it to the no man's land. But by the time he got there, no one was there anymore. The Nazis came, took all the people, including my mother, put them on trains in direction to Poland and Germany. For a little girl to think that she might never see her mama was very difficult to understand and even more difficult to accept. Our father found some work in the city, was commuting daily by train. My sister and I were left alone. She, 5 years my senior, became my little mama, and we managed it as well as we could. Days went by, weeks went by, maybe even more. Nothing unusual happened. Then one day, we were standing over a basin propped up on a low stool so I could reach it as well, trying to do the family laundry. What did I know, a little kid, how you do laundry? I spilled it on myself, on the floor. My knuckles got bloody. My sister was angry. I was upset. In the midst of all the tension, the door to our cabin opened, and our mother walked in. You can imagine my enormous joy and excitement, but also confusion. I didn't know whether she was alive, and it seemed to me that it has been so long since I last saw her, and suddenly she shows up. It took me a very long time to trust that my mama will not vanish one moment. Just like she suddenly showed up, she might suddenly disappear. And I would wake up many times at night just to touch, is mama here? Well, we were happy now. We were together, that was the main thing. And we were no longer hungry as we were on the no man's land. Whatever our father was earning was enough to buy food. But the joy did not last for very long. We started hearing that Soviet soldiers were coming in the middle of the night, taking away all the young men. And no one knew what happened to these men. And my father then was a young man. One day, there was a rumor that our cluster was scheduled for such a raid. So my mother took the train to the city where Dad worked to warn him not to come back until he hears from her. But she missed the last train coming back to us that night. And that night, when my sister and I were alone, Soviet soldiers kicked in the door of the cabins. They gave us a few minutes, get your stuff. Whatever we could grab in a few minutes, we wrapped up. And they marched us to a train station where there was a long line of cattle cars. And they would shove in as many people as they could in each of those box cars. My sister and I cried and cried that we are not going to go without our parents, and those soldiers kept on telling us all kinds of lies. When the platform was almost empty of people, we saw from a distance a small truck and our parents on it. Was I happy to see them? I never asked and never found out how they found transportation, how they heard about the raid. All that mattered to me, they were there. And as soon as they arrived, they shoved us into one of those box cars. So many people in each of them that there was no room for anyone to stretch themselves on the floor. People were leaning against the wall, against bags, suitcases, whatever they could. When the doors were pulled to close the boxcar, across them on the outside was a heavy metal bar to hold the doors in place. When the doors were pulled and we inside, it was so dark you could hardly see. There were no windows, no lights. This was meant for transportation of cows, horses, and so on. The only light was that which was coming between the cracks of the board. Once a day, soldiers walked around with buckets of soup, and everyone was given a cup of soup. On the days when we were lucky, we got with it a little piece of bread, but those lucky days were very far apart. Most of the time, a cup of soup was the food for the day. Every morning, they let everyone out simultaneously to go under the train to relieve themselves. You know, it doesn't take very long. You forget about the notion of privacy, and people just did what they have to do. Yes. Many, many people were sick. Everyone hungry, and everyone scared and anxious, not understanding why the soldiers picked us up, where they're taking us, and what they would do with us. We were on that train somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks, and through additional means of transportation, delivered to a labor camp in the Siberian taiga. Taiga is a very dense forest covering the northern part of Russia. Our little wooden houses were placed right against the forest. Bears would come to the door front. At night, we heard Siberian wolves howling, and we were scared because we heard stories about wolves attacking people at night. That means in the dark. And in Siberia, in wintertime, there are only about 3 hours of daylight, and the rest is dark like night. And in the summer, it's in the reverse. Temperature, they would drop to 50 below and lower. If a bird, for some reason, didn't fly away on time, it would freeze to the tree like a lump of ice. If you were outside, any part of your skin exposed, it didn't take more than a few minutes and it would get frostbitten. We did not have clothing for that kind of a climate. And for me, a kid this size, going out most of the time was impossible because the snow was taller than I was. Everyone had to work, including my older sister who was 11 turning 12. The main work was a cement factory, and some young men were sent to further clear the forest. I did not talk to my children about my Holocaust experiences. I did not talk to anyone until a few years ago. There were people who worked with me for many years, and all they knew was that I was born in Europe. But my youngest child, Naomi, kept on asking me, and apparently I related some bits and pieces to her because I found in her high school writing reference to 2 situations in Siberia. There was one store there, of course, the governmental store. Rarely would you go there looking for something for your daily life, and they had it there. But people would frequent the store to see what do they happen to have today. But no matter what they had, everything was rationed, including bread. My mother sent me once to the store to get the family's rations of bread. Bread sat exposed on a counter, black like mud, heavy like clay. And the clerk in the store would weigh, in our case, what was the portion for 4 people. And I told Naomi that I got a large piece of bread, and with it a tiny, tiny little piece. And it took so much willpower for me to resist my desire of eating the little piece, because I was very, very hungry. So Naomi said, if you were hungry, how come you didn't eat it? I told her that this was a bread for the whole family, and we had to wait until Mother divided it. But no sooner did I hand over this bread to my mother, she took the little piece and put it in my mouth. At some other time, when it was my birthday, my mother said, let's pretend that there's no war. What kind of a present would you like for your birthday? And I told her, a big loaf of bread, and that I could eat as much of it as I want to. And I saw tears flowing down her face, and I had no idea what did I do wrong to make my mama cry. We were extremely hungry, day in and day out. We were in Siberia 2 or 2.5 years, and I remember only one day that I wasn't hungry, and I remember the day very well. We were given a tiny, tiny little piece of land, and we planted potatoes. And my mother said, on the day we harvest the potato, we'll have one meal that you can eat as many potatoes as you want to. On the day we brought the potato from the field, the store had fresh herring. My mother got one herring, cut it into little pieces. We baked the potatoes outdoor and ate them with herring. Oh, was that good? I don't remember how many potatoes I ate, but I remember a thought that stayed with me for a very, very long time. I thought, maybe I'll be so lucky that when I grow up, I'll become rich, very rich. Then I'll be able to eat potatoes whenever I want to. For me, then, to eat potatoes, you have to be either very rich or royalty. You know, I am neither one nor the others, but I do eat potatoes. But no potato will taste as good as the one in Siberia when I was so hungry every day. From Siberia, they shipped us to Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan then was a southern republic of the Soviet Union. Now it's an independent country. But while we were very hungry in Siberia, we were almost starving to death in Uzbekistan. My parents were not given, we ended up in a very, very poor farming community. My parents were not given any land to cultivate, and there was no way of finding work. My father walked from farmer to farmer, willing to do any kind of work in exchange for food. Once in a while, he would get a day's work, but most of the time not. There were long stretches of time that we lived on boiled grass and leaves. My mother would go into the field, pick up anything that was growing wildly, boil it, drink it herself to see how she reacted to it. If she was okay, she would give it to us as well. There was another stretch of time that we lived on broiled onions. Some farmer must have had a good crop of onions. In exchange for some of my mother's garment, we got a bag of onions. We all came down with malaria. Malaria is such a difficult, violent disease. You could speak to a person one day and he was fine. A week or two later, he was gone, dead. I said violent. I had malaria. Most of the time I was not conscious because my fever was so elevated, but when I was, I remember screaming, my bones were breaking, my bones were breaking. No matter how many blankets I had over me, I was shaking with such a violent chill that I was unable to control. After recovering from malaria, I had difficulty walking for some time. There were some Jews from Poland and Uzbekistan. I don't know who they were and how they were able to do it. They established orphanages for Jewish children and would recruit not just orphans, but any Jewish child from Poland they could locate. It was simply an attempt of saving the children from dying of starvation. One day, a man showed up in our village, talked to our parents. Next day, he came with a horse and buggy. Our mother told us we'll go to a place when there were other children, food will be more available, and they will visit when possible. It took us a few days until my sister and I were delivered to the village where the orphanage was housed. The orphanage was contained basically in one large room. From one end of the wall to the others, boards were ripped off the floor, propped up on stacks of bricks, and girls were laying tightly on those boards, one next to the other, covered with old blankets, and their heads completely shaved. You remember my first picture with long braids? They shaved my head completely. The same arrangement for boys on the other side of the wall. The caregiver shaved the children's heads because the sanitary conditions were horrible. I don't remember where and when I was able to get a bath or a shower. And the caregivers feared that under those conditions, the kids will come down with lice that spread diseases, and apparently lice nestle in hair. But we found out very quickly that lice nestle in all kinds of other places as well, because we were about 100 bald-headed kids covered with those crawling lice. Lice are no larger than the head of a pin, but they make your skin burn and itch so badly that you wanted to rip it all off. I remember bleeding all over from that intense scratching. And you know the strange thing, I will repeat to you how long ago that happens. The second I think about the lice, my head starts itching so badly that I want to take my 10 fingers and scratch all over. It lasts a few minutes and it goes away. A few months after entering the old orphanage, my father died. There was an epidemic of dysentery in the village my parents lived. No pharmacy, no physician there. My mother walked the whole day to another community in search of penicillin. I don't know whether she obtained it or not. But when she returned, my father was dead, buried in a communal grave. My mother didn't even know in which one. The war ended in 1945, but I stayed in the orphanage in Uzbekistan till 1946. I don't know what was the reason we were unable to return sooner, but I had no other choice but to wait. During all the years of the Holocaust, hunger, extreme hunger, was a daily part of my life. And this is the kind of hunger that is difficult to understand unless you went through it. Not only does it affect every inch of your body, but every thought you have. And you have to consciously fight and fight to think about things other than food. There was a lot of fear and anxiety, not knowing what will happen from day to day, not understanding often what's going on. There were no newspaper, no radio, and if adults knew anything, they didn't talk to us about it, to us children. Maybe the assumption was, well, they're just kids, the less they know, the better it is. But it worked the other way around for me. The less I knew, the more I was concerned, the more I was speculating. But I tried to keep myself constructively as well as I could. I learned to read when I was quite young. I learned to read myself. Polish, because Polish was my childhood language. And while I was in the Soviet Union, I learned how to read and how to speak Russian. And I would read anything I could put my hand on in one language or the other. I attended, when possible, a kind of a semi-school, but my educational experiences were extremely limited during those years. And the only place where I was expressing what I felt and what I thought was in writing poetry. I was writing poetry since I was a young girl. My home in Michigan was hit by a tornado before you were born, 1975. Half of the house ripped off and blown away, with it most of my belongings. A few years ago, I was looking for a book which I thought survived the tornado. And to my great surprise, not only did I find that book, but in that book I found one notebook of my poems from the orphanage in Uzbekistan. I had a tall stack of them, tightly written, because paper was very precious, very difficult to obtain. This is the one that was left. You can imagine how yellow that paper is with age. It must have been written somewhere between 43 and 46. I was afraid to touch it, that it will fall apart in my hand, but it didn't. And reading some of those poems as an adult surprised me that nothing in it indicates this had been written by a child. Nothing cute, nothing funny, just expressing longing for normalcy. How wonderful it would be to live in a small place with my family, not 100 kids in one room. How great it must be not to be hungry. I am sure I didn't remember, just envision this. And poetically describing Poland, what happened there, of course. And of course, you know what a little kid I was when I left Poland. And thinking of my loving cousins, aunts, and uncles. But when I returned to Poland, nothing of what I envisioned or hoped for became a reality. I spent another 5 years in orphanages in Poland, in the city called Krakow. Anti-Semitism still existed in Poland after the war as well. The tiny Jewish community that was left alive tried to do everything possible for us children who survived. The orphanage was for Jewish children, so were the caregivers, so was the school. That school was held in one room because there were just a handful of us Jewish children left in that city, Krakow. The school took us once to what used to be a concentration, a death camp. In the display room of that camp was a tall pile of shoes, men's shoes, women's shoes, little kid shoes, shoes of those who were sent to the gas chambers to die. There was a tall pile of hair. Women who had long hair, they cut their hair before sending them to death, and they used the hair for various purposes. There were lamps with shades made of human skin, soap made of human flesh. It took me an enormous length of time before I could take a bar of soap in my hand and not think of my aunts, uncles, and cousins. I told you earlier that my extended family in Poland numbered close to 100 members. Not a single one of them, not a single one of them survived. They were all killed by the Nazis. For my mother to continue living in Poland, she felt like living on the graveyard of her brothers and sisters. She and my older sister, who was by then married to a boy from the orphanage, they decided that they have to leave Poland. The only place they could go was to Israel, because the Israeli government was helping Holocaust survivors who wanted to immigrate. I didn't know anything about Israel. I was so eager to stay in Poland and catch up with my lost education. I would work in 2 or 3 academic years in one calendar year. I was like a sponge absorbing information. But the ruling in my orphanage was that when I reached the age of 17, I would have to leave and take care of myself. I did not know a single person outside of the orphanage, neither in Poland nor any other place. My mother and my sister lived within a distance that I could periodically visit with them. And apparently they provided some emotional support which I needed, because I did not have the courage to be left alone after they leave Poland. So in 1950, I joined my mother to immigrate to Israel. This is my mother and I when we immigrated to Israel. Israel was a different chapter of my life with different challenges. I did not know anyone in Israel. I knew I would have to support myself, and I thought I was pretty sure that I would need to support my mother as well. Though she looked fine, she was a sick woman. And I did not know the language spoken in Israel, Hebrew. But as you can see, I survived. I don't want to leave you with the thought and feeling, this is the poor woman who has such a tough life, because I don't think of myself that way at all. Not only am I lucky that I survived, but more importantly to me, I am glad that I was fortunate to establish a meaningful life and significantly contribute to my community. This is what I looked like when I came to the United States. I was 21, 22 years old. I was married, had a baby, and did not know a word of English. That was the third country I was coming without knowing the spoken language. Soviet Union without Russian, Israel without Hebrew, United States without English. But when I was young, I was picking up languages amazingly fast. It didn't take me too long. I entered the University of Cincinnati. I lived in Cincinnati for about 10 years. I earned an undergraduate degree in psychology, a master's in social psychology. A year or two later, I entered Xavier University, received a second master's, MBA, with a major in hospital administration. And last year, I received an honorary doctorate in humanities. I was fortunate to have a very meaningful work in the healthcare industry, in particular mental health. I am retired now, which I sometimes say kiddingly means I work and I don't get paid. But I do things that are extremely important to me. My whole adult life, I lived guided by the Jewish ethical principle called in Hebrew tikkun olam. Tikkun olam literally means repairing the world. Implied in it is that we each have a responsibility to do everything we can to make everyone's life a little better. How I do it is, first of all, how I relate to people. I respect fully and equally every good human being. Doesn't matter what's the color of their skin. Doesn't matter what's their religion, poor or rich or where they came from. They're a good human being. They have my full respect. I support and contribute as much as I am able to organizations that work worldwide to alleviate hunger. I know what hunger is. I don't want another child in the world to go through it. I use my time and my skills to enrich the life of my community. I live in the Metro Detroit area. Maybe one of these days you will have an opportunity to visit the Detroit Institute of Art, #1 art museum in the nation. And if you are there and you meet me there, I will not talk to you about the Holocaust. I will help you to understand and enjoy the art, because I have been a docent there for 25 years. I'm a mediator in court, which means I help people resolve conflicts without having to appear before the judge, and the decision becomes legally binding. I have been on the board of directors of the oldest civil rights organization in the US, called American Jewish Committee, for more years than I remember. But the most important thing to me, my mission in life now, is to use my Holocaust experiences to tell and show what hate and prejudice did and what it can do again unless we learn from it, unless we all learn from it. Since the University of Michigan published my memoir, Into No Man's Land, I will tell you more about the memoir a bit later, I have been invited all over the country to schools, universities, military, all over, to tell my story and to help people learn from it. This was Huntington, Indiana High School. We have here 1,800 students and teachers in the gym. The little person in the center am I. I was here 7 years ago, but last year I had an invitation from a teacher named Ben, who was a student here 7 years ago. Now he is a teacher and asked me, would I please speak to his students? I was very pleased to hear that what he heard had such an impact that he felt it was important for his students to hear that as well. I was in this school again, I was in Ben's schools, and many others. This was a church. By now, I will just go a bit quicker because our time is limited. Yes. What helps me to travel all over the country, and it took us a few days to come here, and the upper Michigan, it took 2 long days. What helped me is my partner, Bob, who believes that what I do is extremely important, and he comes with me where I go. By now, I sometimes say that he right now is so experienced in being there with me and driving and taking care of the book that he earned the title of Director in Transportation and Logistics. Yes. I'm just showing you, this was the Knights of Columbus. I spoke in the evening to the total gathering, and the day before had the rest the women. I was a keynote speaker for a few years on Constitution Days in the courthouse, started by discussing why I, a Holocaust survivor, was invited to speak on this occasion, and we talk about the meaning of the Constitution. In many schools, I address the whole student body, but there are some schools that invite me to speak to their 7th, 8th grader, and since the first time they heard me, they invite me every year. I speak in middle schools, high schools, and universities because I feel that students younger than that in aggregate are not ready for the topic, but only once did I address 4th graders in Boyne City, Michigan. And the teacher asked me, would I please speak to them because they studied immigration? Look at all those little hands with wonderful questions. Every gathering is very important to me, but speaking to the military is particularly intense. This is Stennis, Mississippi. The center, space center where they test all the rockets. It's like a city of its own. This is Admiral Okun, who awarded me with a special plaque and bought my memoir. More recently, I spoke to another military group, and they awarded me a recognition as well. This was Habitat for Humanity. Okay, Sault Ste. Marie. Sault Ste. Marie in Upper Michigan is a very small community. Some schools don't have more than about 50 students in aggregate. But school buses were coming from within a radius more than 100 miles to fill every seat in this 800-seat auditorium. The day before, I spoke to adults, about 500 or 600 adults, and I'll mention that picture again. In 2023, Monroe County Community Colleges gave me the recognition as the most advanced of all the Herd Diversity Program. This is the president. Okay. This is my memoir. You young people will be the future leaders of this nation and maybe beyond. It will be your responsibility to do everything possible to prevent such horrors from happening. And in order to do so, it is not enough to know that this happened. You have to learn to recognize signs that lead to a totalitarian system capable of doing such things, to a totalitarian leader that is able to do and willing the same what the monster Hitler said. When I say a totalitarian leader or system, can anyone tell me what we mean by a totalitarian leader? Do I see a hand? Yes, would you stand up? Anyone stand up and loudly tell everyone what's a totalitarian system? Did I see a hand? Yes. Okay, since we cannot hear, stand up, my dear. Come, I'll give you the mic.
Like a dictator?
Like a dictator. Tell a little more, what's a dictator?
Like someone who made themselves like more powerful than like they do like bad things.
Hear this, your friends. It's a dictator. Thank you. A totalitarian leader, a dictator, someone who wants to act like a king and make decisions that will affect everyone's life. Let me tell you what happened in Germany, and this is an example of what happens in a totalitarian leadership country. The first thing was to prevent people from knowing what's going on. I am not sure whether it was Hitler, the leader of the fascist Germany, or Stalin, the leader of the totalitarian Soviet Union, who declared free press the enemy of the people. The Germans attacked and prevented people, journalists, to write of what's going on. Not only to write, describe what's going on, but feeding people all kinds of lies and misinformation. You know, the decisions that people make are based on the information they have. And if they accept lies and make decisions based on those lies, the decisions are incorrect. Then, when I hear a governmental entity in our country decide which kind of books can be held in a library, whether school library or public library, I envision book burning in Germany. In every city, they were required to have in the center a big fire and bring the books of every Jewish author, including the world-known Einstein. They were required to burn books on the subjects that didn't serve the totalitarian state or by people who didn't support it. And this was another way of controlling what people read, what people learn, what people know. Then finding a group of people as scapegoats, that is, blaming everything wrong that is going on one group of people. it was easy for the Germans to use Jews as scapegoats because anti-Semitism was deeply rooted in the Western world. But other totalitarian leaders used other groups as scapegoats. By using people as scapegoats, not only are you blaming the wrong party, but you are diverting the attention from what really goes on. Yes. I have 5 more minutes, so I have to talk very quickly. Sorry, you guys. I would just say, I am very sorry that we cannot discuss more. And I am very sorry that you don't have an opportunity to ask questions, because normally when I am invited to a school, I ask for minimum 2 hours. And in some schools, I stay for 4 hours to discuss things. What I told you is just a small fragment of what went on in my life. I hope that each one of you will have an opportunity to read my memoir published by the University of Michigan, not only to know what happened to me and my family, but to learn the basics, the flavor of the totalitarian system in the Soviet Union and in Germany, from which you can learn. In most schools that I speak, the schools buy sets of books for their English or history classes. Maybe your school will be able to order those books from me. I am the only place. The book is available on my website that can be ordered individually. But schools that buy sets of books, I offer it at a discount to them. And you will probably find ways how to contact me. Irene Miller Speaker.com. On my website, you can learn about where I have spoken and how you can get in contact with me. I just want to leave you with the thought that I have a great belief that you will be open-minded, wonderful future. Which of you who will be entitled to vote on next election? Raise your hand. Do we have any high schools? Yes. It is extremely important, because before you become the leader, you will have an opportunity to select who will lead you. And make sure the person, not just that you vote and that influence others to vote, but that you vote for someone who reflects your values, because this person will affect your rights and your freedoms. And my best wishes to each of you. I am so privileged to have the opportunity to be with you and to address you. And maybe some days, your school will invite me in to speak there, and then we will have an opportunity to talk and to discuss further. Best wishes to each of you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.